I finally received my Canon 200 to 800 millimeter lens, and after letting it just sit in the shipping box for a week, I had 2 hours to take it out for a test run and provide you with my initial thoughts. Unfortunately, I spent the first hour searching for a subject. With just an hour left, I happened upon 2 red-shouldered hawks perched on a branch above a river. There was no way to shoot anything other than a high-key shot. The larger hawk turned my direction and seemed to be preparing to take off. I quickly adjusted my settings. I was happy with the uniqueness of the shot, but I think that I could have avoided some of the motion blur with a slightly faster shutter. The hawk perched on a branch and posed before allowing me to photograph him from a close distance while I was still in my truck. Eventually he went to an even closer branch and I was able to photograph a few close-ups from my truck. I have the lens mounted on the Canon R5, and I did find that whenever I was photographing those close-ups from inside my truck, maybe there was some atmospheric conditions going on. Now I follow all the rules of keeping the truck cold, not turning on the heat even though it is cold outside. The truck was shut off, so there wouldn't have been any kind of exhaust fumes or anything like that. Now I will say though that our temperatures have been fluctuating and I was by water, so I think that there were some atmospheric conditions going on that maybe caused the focus to struggle just a little bit. Now that became even more obvious whenever I looked at some video that I recorded. I definitely could see some heat haze movement in the video. Later I had a pretty cool moment where he flew down to the ground. I was able to get down low and it appeared that he was eating a grub, and I was able to capture a few shots. Now I will say that I love the versatility that going from 200 to 800 millimeters allows. It allows you to tell a more complete story. I love shooting close-ups, but I also like the ability to be able to zoom out a little bit. Definitely having that extra 300 millimeters of reach compared to the RF 100 to 500 allowed me to get much closer to the subject. I was able to physically move close to the subject on different occasions, but being at 800 millimeters definitely gives you just a totally different view than being at 500 millimeters. It is a challenge to get from 200 to 800 millimeters with this lens. To be able to turn, I'm talking like I had to do that. That's a pretty significant turn to be able to get all the way through. And whenever you're looking into your camera, you know, I'm looking, those were pretty big turns. That was like 2.5 turns, pretty big turns to get there. And I doubt that you're probably going to be moving that drastically whenever you're trying to keep your subject in your frame as you're looking. I think that I have a habit whenever I'm shooting to always zoom in as close as it goes and then adjust from there. And I found myself doing that with this, being zoomed in to 800, and I was searching all over. That's definitely something that I'm going to have to practice, being at 800 and finding my subject. But the advantage of this lens is to be able to be zoomed out to 300, 400, 200, and then zoom in and find your subject. But I just found myself that I was kind of defaulting to 800 millimeter because that's fun. That's why you have the lens, to be able to zoom in like that. Now, I have heard some complaints about the lens collar. The fact that it won't come off. So you can tilt it and you can turn it, but I will tell you that one thing that I like about it is that it won't come off. So I feel confident that I can carry my camera and lens by this collar and walk wherever I need to walk and just kind of not worry about it at all and know that it's going to not come off. You know, the 100 to 500, there is a lock on it, and I have heard some horror stories where it has come undone. It actually came undone on me one time, but it was in a completely safe situation, so it didn't suffer any kind of damage. But that is something that's in the back of my head all the time. I'm one of these guys that keeps my lens strap attached to my camera. I have some different thoughts about that. I might be getting rid of that here soon, and let me know in the comments if you use a lens strap or not. But I really do like having that. Now, one thing that I wish is that it would be Arca Swiss ready, that I wouldn't need to put an adapter on there, that I'd be able to just slide this right onto a tripod, because now you need to add that adapter to it and you're just adding more bulk. I do get that a lot of people are complaining though that this takes up more room in the bag. That's kind of unfortunate that it is so big, and I do like that it's big because my hand fits in there perfectly, but it is true that in the bag it's going to take up more space. But you know, I guess you can just turn it whichever way you need to, and then hopefully it'll fit in your bag a little bit better. Now, as far as fitting in the bag goes, this is a huge lens. Now, obviously we can take the hood off and, you know, we're going to make it a little bit smaller there, but it is significantly bigger than the 100 to 500. Also, with the 800, the RF 800, you were able to compact it down just a little bit. Now, this is about the same size even as that lens would have been compacted. But this lens, with the body still attached, will not fit in my current bag. And that's kind of annoying. I need to get a new bag anyway, but I wish that maybe there was just some way to make it just a little bit smaller. It is beefy, it is heavy, it weighs a lot. And I was waiting for a bird, that red-shouldered hawk, to fly, waiting to get a shot in flight, and standing there, holding my lens, holding my camera, waiting and waiting and waiting. I tell you what, my arms got a workout. So maybe I do need to hit the gym. Actually, I know I need to hit the gym. My wife probably wouldn't mind if I hit the gym a little bit, but maybe just lifting this thing up for quite a while is going to do the trick. But it is definitely a heavier lens than the 100 to 500. It feels heavier whenever it's extended out. And it's definitely heavier than the 800 millimeter RF. Now that lens I thought was maybe a little bit too light, and almost so light that it was hard to hold it steady. You're not gonna have that problem here with this one unless you start shaking because you've been holding it for so long. Comparing it to the 800 RF though, I will say, it feels much beefier and much more professional. Kind of felt like the 800 RF was more of a toy. You don't get that feeling with this at all. This feels like a legit lens. Now, something to keep in mind, and I said the same thing about the RF 800 whenever I reviewed it. This lens, it will go to 800 millimeters, and you can pick out subjects that are way off in the distance. But you're going to run into atmospheric conditions that are going to affect the quality of your image. So keep that in mind, that this lens is really made to get close shots of close subjects. You're not going to be able to look way off into the distance and find a little tiny bird on a tree and get a crystal clear, sharp shot of that bird. You're going to be able to get close shots of close subjects. And even with my experience with that red-shouldered hawk being relatively close to me, I think, you know, I was in my truck, I was looking up at him probably 50, 60 feet. And even with that, I had some atmospheric conditions going on this winter day. I shot at f10 for the most part throughout that session because I thought that probably f9, although that's wide open, probably wouldn't be as sharp, even though it would be letting in more light. There was some bright light, so I wasn't so worried about that. So I shot at f10, and I thought that worked out pretty well. And I feel like there's some decent bokeh with this lens. And of course, it's always going to depend on your background. Just pay attention to your background. The red-shouldered hawk did go up onto a light post, and there were some trees off in the distance, and I thought that it created a really neat look. So at $18.99, the lens is not cheap, but it's not expensive either whenever you consider the cost of prime lenses. 800 millimeters is a crazy amount of length. Comparing it to the RF 800, I think that this is a huge step forward. It just feels like a better lens. It is almost twice as much as the RF 800 whenever it was released, and I'm sure that you can get the RF 800 relatively cheap now that this thing is starting to make its way into the marketplace. So if you are interested, you should be able to find one of those lenses used fairly cheap. But I am extremely happy with this purchase. It's just fun to use. It's fun to be at 800 millimeters. The upgrade over the RF 800 to be able to zoom out, find your subject and then zoom in, to be able to zoom out from a single perspective and be able to get multiple focal lengths is just a fantastic feature that I really value, especially when working on video. So I've only had about an hour with the lens, but so far so good. I'm excited to get it out a little bit more and try it in different atmospheric conditions, different weather conditions, different lighting conditions. Put it on the R7 and see how it performs with that camera. But so far so good. I had a lot of fun using it, and for me, that's what it's all about. Did I enjoy the experience? And if so, then it was worth the money. If you're ready to take your photography to the next level, click the link in the description to get my free guide to get out of automatic mode and start using manual mode. And you might like this video over here with my tips for beginning photographers.